My name is Brian Fargo, and I'm the CEO of inXile. It's an interesting observation that we went from small to big. In all actuality, I've always done big products my entire life. We just sort of, we've been working on this game for the last over 2 years. But in the meantime, I've been wanting to learn more about direct consumer and social networking and things like that. So by my quest for knowledge, we ended up kind of line rider, fantastic contraption, doing some things along the way. But the truth is, I've been working on this style of game my whole life. It's kind of funny on that one because that was actually back in 2008. I think there was some announcements recently, and I thought, well, that's kind of old news, you know. No, we've been working on this for the last 2.5 years, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to talk about it. That's just how it works, right? And so I've had to be able to keep mum and people. What are they doing? Are they still in business? Are they just doing little applications? And I just had to keep my mouth shut, until I could get out and talk about it. So I'm super thankful to be out here now on the road and letting people what I've been up to for the last couple of years. In terms of my inspirations, right? When I go way back, it's the good old. Well, I could start with reading the Lord of the Rings novels when I was a kid, Mines of Moria, all that kind of stuff. But Dungeons and Dragons was a huge influence on me. I'm only in this business now because of my hobbies, which were Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy novels and computer programming. And then Wizardry was a big one. I spent, that was probably my first time I was ever like addicted, crazy to a computer game, it's 24 hours kind of business. And that's, then I did Bard's Tale, right, in '85, and then we did Wasteland and Fallout and Baldur's Gate and other products. But I've always loved RPGs, but I've always loved that kind of the romantic notion of the dungeon crawl, and then they became more action-oriented, which was cool, and so I finally said, nobody's really done one for a long time. And I sort of was looking at my television one time. I have this beautiful television at home, big monitor, right? Say, what would it look like on this TV, this big, huge TV, running on an Xbox Live or what, a PS3? That's when the idea, and then it was like, okay, let's sort of say, okay, we love that category. It's always done well. People love it, even today. But let's mix that with whatever today's gameplay style is, right? Because it's a different generation. The way they play games, the metaphors, the interface, everything they do is different than they did then. So let's recognize that, but still bring the core elements of the dungeon crawl, exploration, puzzle solving, looting, +3 sword, whatever, right? Those wonderful moments, and mix that with today. Well, if I had to put it into a genre, I would put it in the action genre because it is a more action-oriented game. But that said, it's not like some of the action games are just run. You're on a path, you got guns behind you, guns in front of you, and you never get to stop to breathe. Ours is not like that. We have our moments like that for sure, because you want the big epic, the big cinematic effects, and then the things blowing up all around you. That's exciting. It gets the adrenaline pumping. But we want those moments where you stop, you explore, you're trying to figure stuff out, you're trying to get rewarded for doing so. We want to creep you out, we want to scare the hell out of you, we want to do all these other sort of moments in between. But if I had to choose, I would say action for sure, but it's got RPG elements. It's not an RPG, but RPG elements, so to answer your question. We did build the game around the co-op. See, that's the thing about, about multiplayer games. Most people, when they say multiplayer game, the differentiation between co-op and multiplayer, right? So multiplayer is generally throw them in an arena, let them battle it. You can throw multiplayer into a game last month of production. You can suddenly decide to throw it in, basically. Co-op, you can't do that. You have to design it from the very beginning, and it's the thing that I get the most requests from any of my friends that play games. They ask me, why doesn't your industry make more games I can play with my wife or whatever, or my friends? It's always to battle it out. And so, we heard that for sure. And then secondly, with D&D, we always played it as a group. You rarely played it solo with just a dungeon master and yourself. You always had a group of friends, and that was kind of part of the fun. So we wanted to bring that out also. If you're going to do something in and around that category, you've got to have an interesting story, and we do. This is fantasy, and it's easily recognizable and accessible, not just from an interface standpoint, but from a visual standpoint. But then we kind of take you someplace really dark, and so it's definitely dark fantasy. So basically, the two main characters, there's Alara, who's the female, and Kadak, who's the male, and they're two mercenary adventurers, and they have a prior history up until this game sort of starts right where their last adventure is ending, and so they are sort of basically set off in the beginning to find these crystals for this spirit, and they go upon the first town, and the whole town's been emptied. The people are being enslaved, and they start getting drawn into this world where there's this slegs stuff that turns people into these sort of like almost like drug addict demons, and human sacrifice, and they get drawn into a very dark world, and their personalities are such that she's really more like the alpha male in the character, and kind of a bit of a twist. She's the gung-ho, let's go, and he's the more cautious one, even though he's the brute, right? And there's a bit of a chemistry between the two, sort of a kind of a, they're friends, but there's a little sexual chemistry at the same time, and then we really take it to some weird, interesting plot twists from there. Well, we were very familiar with the Unreal Engine for one, but the whole the way we started this project was we said let's make a game around a technology that does exactly what we want it to do. So for us, we knew that this would do it perfectly, and so consequently, we've been able to spend our last 2 years just focusing on the graphics and the gameplay. That's it, right? A lot of the time, a lot of products go sideways in this business because they're simultaneously trying to make the engine, or they're trying to use an engine that doesn't really do what it's supposed to do, right? I mean, if you use Unreal to try to make a driving game, you're probably going to have a problem, versus a guy that has a driving engine simulator that's ready to go right out of the chute, and all you're doing is layering it up from there, right? So we very much took that approach, saying the Unreal Engine, it does exactly what we want. Let's build around it, use its strengths, use everything that it does well, and just tune it up, and that's what we did. Interestingly enough, one of the comments we've got the most out of on our little press tour here is like, I can't believe nobody else has done this before. So we're back to scratching the nerve, I believe. And so the people there isn't really a fantasy action game that kind of point on hits it. And so in that way, you've got sci-fi, right? We got Halo, right? We certainly got a few World War II ones out there, right? And then what happened to fantasy? The biggest category, I might argue. I mean, World of Warcraft is huge, right? So you got one of the biggest categories there are. So bringing that together, I think it made natural sense, and I think our feedback so far has been that. And again, and I think that the important part about this game is that we have to do some things that you're comfortable and familiar with. So right away, you're comfortable, you can pick up the controls, you know how to do cover system and that sort of thing, but then we take you somewhere else. Same thing. In the beginning, we take you through the dungeons, and then we take you somewhere else. So we do take you to we want, like the Lord of the Rings film, right? I mean, there was the Mines of Moria, but then there's these big battle scenes. This game is epic in its feel, and so we want those big sort of moments that happen, those cinematic moments and pieces. And so we open it up to these vistas, and you're going across huge caverns, and then even within the dungeon itself, it'll just all of a sudden open up, or there'll be drop-offs that go down 1,000 feet. So that kind of that sense of largeness and wonder, we didn't want you to be in a dungeon locked in the whole time, because that wouldn't have brought the world alive. I taught them everything they know. What do you mean? What am I listening to them for? What are you talking about? They've been great. They've been great, and because when you work with talented people, they all have their own way of looking at the world, and so. And we've been doing it a long time, but our egos are never too big that we don't listen to other people. So, so they come in with they look at it from a certain perspective, and we do, and we have these debates, and we go back and forth. At the end of the day, our hearts are always what's right for the product, not who came up with the idea. So there's been a lot of great synergy in that way.
And have you any idea when it's going to be out?
I have no idea. No, we plan on finishing it this year, but it's up to them in terms of the final date.
Tell us a bit more about the plot and the world and the main characters.
No, I can't. No.